So I lied to the Dalai Lama. I hadn't planned on doing it. It wasn't like a set thing. It just ended up happening. You see, a couple of years ago, I was serving a church near where a Tibetan Buddhist center had opened. And they took over this abandoned nursing home and renovated it. And since their leader was an old friend of the Dalai Lama, they were able to arrange to have the Dalai Lama come and bless the center on a visit to the U.S. And I was given the honor of welcoming him on behalf of the interfaith clergy. In fact, I was asked to welcome the Dalai Lama on behalf of all the religious communities there in Medford. And things on that morning that the Dalai Lama came, things were amazing. It was a day like this, bright and sunny. The whole building, the whole neighborhood was really festooned with banners and prayer flags, and everyone, Tibetans and Americans alike, were decked out in their finest clothes. And people from all across the region had flocked into this little neighborhood to witness it. And when I saw a group of neighborhood kids setting up a lemonade stand, I knew that even the locals were going to enjoy this day. Which is pretty amazing considering that just a few weeks earlier I had attended a very heated meeting with the director of the Buddhist Center and the chief of police and the neighbors. Now, I understand why I was there, and I understood why obviously the person who ran the center was there, and I also understood why the neighbors were there. Why the chief of police was there, I'm not too sure. I remember asking, because he seemed really confrontational about everything that was going on both sides. And when I asked someone later on, I said, why did you invite him? They said, well, he sort of invited himself. He told us that he first got into Buddhism years ago from watching kung fu movies. Now, and at this meeting, the neighbors were really upset. They lived on sort of a quiet street, and this was going to be a big hoopla, and they were expressing their concerns about parking and being able to pick up their grandchildren from school, and they were worried about their flower beds getting trampled by crazed Buddhists who would turn out to see His Holiness. And at one point, the police chief and a very fearful neighbor got into each other's face and were expressing some very un-Buddhist opinions in some very un-Buddhist ways at a very un-Buddhist volume. And to tell you the truth, I just wanted to stand up and sort of say, hey folks, look, you can complain all you want, but the Dalai Lama is coming. But that's not what I said. I was luckily, a little voice in the back of my head allowed me to reframe the situation. And I think I was able to help folks understand the significance and the situation and the importance of this event for the whole day, for the whole city. I was able to explain to people who would be coming to see and hear the Dalai Lama were more like pilgrims than like Beatles fans. What it was I said, he's like the Buddhist Pope, and he's visiting your street. And everyone went, oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Oh, good. Oh, excellent. And the arguing stopped. It was amazing. And everything got settled, and on that day when the Dalai Lama arrived, folks from the Buddhist Center were so hospitable, so welcoming to everyone who showed up, regardless of people's previous expressions and opposition or of their support. I realized then and there that's how we needed to be in our church communities, in our local communities, and in our national community as well. Hospitable. Hospitality, it's been such a key element in the history of all faiths, not just at the front door of our churches, but in our daily lives, which is really where we live our faiths. Hospitality means the love of strangers. It is a message that we must continue to bring to those whom we share this world with. It's a way of being that melts the culture of fear that so many experience in their day-to-day existence. Hospitality is a gift of community. We heard it in that passage with Paul telling the followers of Jesus to continue to be hospitable, right? Work towards unity, live in harmony with one another, avoid thinking you're better or wiser. If your enemy is hungry, give them something to eat. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. Because if you treat them kindly, it would be like heaping hot coals on their heads. Overpower evil with good. Now, one of the things that when we read the scriptures, especially these letters that Paul sends out and the letters that also follow there in the Christian Bible, the thing is that we read those letters, but we never get to read the letters that Paul is responding to. But we can imagine what it is they're saying and what they're about. These are people who are new to the faith, and they don't know what's expected of them. How should they act with one another or with the outside world? Much like each of us when we first arrive in this church. When we first arrive in churches, we wonder, and we come in, we wonder, will we have to kneel? How does this coffee hour thing work? Where is the bathroom? Is it particularly cold in here for a religious reason? And you can only imagine that the folks back who were receiving these letters and writing these letters to Paul, that they wanted to know how friendly they should be to other folks, these folks who weren't Christian. Will we perhaps attract new folks by being aloof and sort of mysterious? We'll be like the cool goth kids that people will think like, oh, who are those guys? We want to be like them. And Paul's saying, no, don't be like that. We want you to continue to be hospitable to other folks. We want to be hospitable and welcoming to people who come and visit our churches. We're always afraid of coming on too strong, though, isn't it? That's always something that always happens. We want folks to know that we want them when they come and visit our congregations. We want to be exuberant, but we don't want to seem desperate, right? We don't want them to think that we're stalking them to come and be on committees. Yet we need them. And they obviously came to church for a reason, a need, a desire of making meaning in their lives, of finding use. And that is what I was thinking when I ended up lying to the Dalai Lama on that day. Not about why people come to church, but how do I greet the Dalai Lama? Since I was representing the city's religious communities, I began to wonder if perhaps I should give him a gift of some sort. So I called up the director and I asked, and I said, should I be presenting the Dalai Lama with some sort of gift? And she said, well, traditionally, you're not supposed to appear before the Dalai Lama empty-handed. But, that's why she said, that's why you see people giving the Dalai Lama these silk scarves. But, as a non-Buddhist, you don't have to worry about that. He's a simple monk. If you wanted to, you could get him some woolly socks. Just make sure that they're the right color. They have to be sort of orange or saffron. But, woolly socks would be great. And I hung up, oh, thanks, woolly socks. And then I thought, woolly socks? What I actually thought, I thought, if she's thought of woolly socks, everyone's thought of woolly socks, right? I want to get him something special, So I started looking for suitable gifts for the Buddha incarnate. I sent out emails to all my friends asking them for their input. And my friends responded with the way that friends do. They're like, whoa, what do you get for the man who has nothing? You get him a t-shirt saying, what would the Buddha do? It being Medford, they said you can get him a gift certificate to that new nail salon. Well, a day came, and I had no gift for the Buddha, for the Dalai Lama. As one friend said, if Jesus had meant you to find a gift for the Dalai Lama, then Jesus would have provided a gift for you. And so I got dressed in my suit, and I headed down the street to where the temple was, And as I was walking in, I hear my name, and I look over, and there's a friend of mine, my buddy Andy, is there. And he said, "Hank, come over here." And he said, did you end up getting him a gift? And I said, "No, I wasn't able to get him anything." He goes, "Well, here, I ran out to Kmart this morning, and I got him this knit cap, like a knit cap you wear in the winter, but it was the right color." I went, "Oh, that's great. Oh, that's funny, great." And I stuffed it in my pocket. And I didn't think of it. I just stuffed it in my pocket. And I went inside to wait for the Dalai Lama to arrive. And we waited, and eventually a bunch of limos pulled up in front. And I'm standing there, and I'm practicing what I'm going to say. And I'm standing with all the other local dignitaries, and we're all probably practicing in our heads what it is we're going to say to the Dalai Lama. And then the Dalai Lama's crew arrive, right? And the first to walk into the room where I am is this monk, and he's wearing the saffron robes, and he's carrying a big boombox. And he presses the button, and it's those Tibetan horns, which are like those alpine horns, playing. And the director from the Buddhist Center who was standing next to me said, "We couldn't actually find anybody who had one of those Tibetan horns, so we have to settle with the recording." So, okay, all right, so that's great. All right, so the things, it's all very strange, but it's all very exciting, and I'm going over once again in my head what it is I'm going to say, and then into the room walks the Dalai Lama. And my mind goes blank because it's the Dalai Lama, and he's walked in the same room with me, and this is great. And the Dalai Lama makes his way down the line of dignitaries. He meets the mayor and his wife. He meets the chaplain from Tufts. He meets the Kung Fu loving police chief. And then before I know it, he's being presented to me. And I had to quickly remember what it was I was going to say. And I said, "So on behalf of all the religious communities in Medford, I want to welcome you to our city." And just in that split second where you could tell he was like, "Oh, great," and then he's just about to turn, I thought, the hat, right? I went, oh, and here's this hat. And I gave it to him. And he's like, "Oh," and he looks at it like, "Why is this guy giving me this hat?" And that's when it happened. And I said, I felt like I needed a reason why I was giving him this hat. And I said, because otherwise I'd look ridiculous. So I said, "The children in my church were worried that with all your traveling, that you might catch cold. And so they wanted me to give you this hat." And he went, "Oh, that's great." And he puts the hat on. He looks like this little Buddhist gnome, when we laugh, great pictures, I lied to the Dalai Lama. I lied to the Dalai Lama. I lied to the reincarnation of the Buddha of compassion. I hadn't planned on it. It just happened. Of course, I didn't think I was lying. As a matter of fact, I thought I was pretty quick on my feet to come up with something like that snappy. Like, "Oh, that's good." In fact, I didn't realize I had lied to the Dalai Lama until I got home and told my wife, Rebecca, all about it. And then she said, "You lied to the Dalai Lama?" I was a little freaked out when she put it like that. Now, from the story of Jacob that we read this morning, we have the story of Jacob deceiving his father so that he could get his father's blessings and sort of rule over his brother and become a great nation. And from that story, we can gather that perhaps God has a plan for us that will work out. Now, I don't know if that's exactly true. We cannot do something we know is wrong with the hope that something good will come out of it. We cannot know what other better things would have happened if we had done what we should have. Fortunately, there is still mercy for us when we fail. After my wife had pointed out to me what had happened, what I had done, the next day I called up a good friend who's a Buddhist priest, and I told him the story, and he laughed, and he said, "It's okay. Buddhists understand situational ethics. It's okay." I guess I was trying too hard to be hospitable. I was trying. As St. Paul said, we should accept one another in our diversity because God has accepted all of us. He says, faith is expressed through our mutual love and acceptance of one another. At the time, Paul was saying these things to show folks that the traditional teachings of hospitality would still continue. teaching the early Christians that they should not be out of step with the rest of the world they lived in. Today, when we hear those things, we might realize how much has changed in these last 2,000 years. We have yet to see the leaders of our nation feed our enemies if they are hungry. They are not overcoming evil with good. They are not killing our enemies with kindness. We're just killing them. Someone once said, we come into our full humanity only in relationship with others, and for us not to be warmly hospitable is a moral equivalent of not feeding the hungry. There has to be a welcoming culture in this and every congregation, regardless of which denomination we belong to. A culture of hospitality has to permeate our personal faith. And do you know why? Because it's unacceptable to deny religious community to any person. That is as true in our wider world as it is here in both of our faiths. Both of our churches are in transition. Your churches are in transition. Both dealing with searching for a new settled minister and finding relevance in a rapidly changing culture. Some may still be wondering in this time of transition, how do we bring new people into our churches? But perhaps the better question is, how do we send us out into the world? Some might ask, how do we survive, when really we need to be asking, how do we serve? We have to fight the urge to sit in the same pew each week. We have to go and chat to new people, even when we want to speak to our friends when they come here. We need to realize that our faith doesn't just happen in these four walls every Sunday, but it happens out there. And that we need to do more work out there in the world, not necessarily to draw people into here, but that we draw more people into the work of God that we are doing outside of these walls. We have to seek out the visitors when they do come here, welcome them, greet everyone who comes into this house of worship the same way we would greet someone who comes to our houses, into our homes. We need to do things outside the walls of this church. We need to be doing things to make the reign of God present in this time and this place. We need to take what we have learned here in our churches and bring it out into the world. We need to use our church as a place where we practice what it means to be human. We in the liberal churches, the liberal faiths of America, have our work cut out for us because we must work to make sure that all of us can talk about our religious values. We have to talk about our religious values. We have to talk about our values as religious values, not just political values, right? We forget that we have our own good news to promote, one different from other religious communities. Our congregations should be seen as cradles for the imagination. Yes, this is a place where people find sanctuary from the world, but it is also a place where our energy is restored, our batteries get charged, so that we can go out into the world and help change it. At the end of that event, before I had gone home and spoken to my wife, after the Dalai Lama had left and most of the crowd had gone home, I had a chance to speak with a person who was the first director of the Buddhist Center. And I congratulated him on the wonderful day. And I thanked him for being so hospitable to all the clergy who were there. And he told me that he wanted to thank me for making this day possible. He reminded me that I was the first to come and to greet their group when they first arrived at the city. I made sure that the mayor was invited to the clergy, that they met the mayor and that they were invited to the clergy meetings. He told me that the warmth and the hospitality that I'd shown convinced them that they needed to celebrate the arrival of the Dalai Lama with all of the community. And you know what? As much of an honor as it was to meet the Dalai Lama, it was a far greater honor to be told that what I thought was a natural part of being human in a community made such a difference in other people's lives. That was the greatest blessing I had that day. May we all know the power of living our faith in all that we do. Amen.